pirates and apes and mummies. Oh my. Summer blockbuster season is here, but who will come out on top? I'm Sasha Pearlraver, and this is Screen Junkies News Summer Movie Preview. Memorial Day is just around the corner, and that means it is almost officially summer. What better way to kick off the summer than with Dan Merle, my summer movie report buddy, my hombre, my host of all hosts. We're going to sit here and we're going to talk about all the films that are coming out, what we think is going to top the box office every weekend, what we're excited for, what we think will be #1. There's a lot going on this summer, Dan.
So much going on. It seems like even more than last summer. And last summer already had too much going on. And they doubled down.
They big time doubled down. And kicking off the first weekend, we've got the week of May 26th. We're starting with Baywatch.
Yeah.
Baywatch, which is 100% in the 21-22 Jump Street model. We've got The Rock, we've got Zac Efron, we've got lots of slow-mo running, lots of jiggling.
Yes.
Do you think this will do well, or will Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Man Tell No Tales come out on top? The return of Captain Jack Sparrow. What do you think will win?
If Baywatch is rated PG-13, I would think that this is more of a direct head-to-head competition. However, the fact that Baywatch is rated R, to me, does kind of differentiate the audiences a little bit. I think that Pirates is going to make more money opening weekend. I actually put them both on my top 10 list. I think they're both going to be top 10 summer releases. There's a precedent for R-rated comedies being in the top 10, and there's a precedent for The Rock being in the top 10. So I think the Baywatch is going to do pretty well, especially for a comedy. I think it'll make its money back. It'll be a nice, healthy profit. I think that Pirates is going to do enough to get into the top 10, but I actually think it's going to be more of a international play. I don't know if this is going to be like a top 3 or 4 summer movie here in the US, but the box office is so unpredictable. And if this is a great movie, which who knows, it could be, if this is a great Pirates movie, there is an audience I think that would go see it. The question is it a great Pirates movie, or do we have a pooping glass situation?
So if you did watch Summer Movie Report, you know that Alice Through the Pooping Glass was a big disappointment last year, and I think this is the pooping glass of the summer.
On Memorial Day, I think.
On Memorial Day.
I think it was X-Men versus Alice.
And Alice just...
Yeah, big time.
Here's my thought. The people who grew up with Pirates of the Caribbean are now teenagers. Do they want to see this movie for a 5th time, or do they want to go see Baywatch? I think they are all in on Alexandra Daddario, and I think that crowd is going Baywatch. I think people who want a kids movie may show up for it, but the following week we've got something that might take a lot more of the kids' dollars.
True.
I'm going to go ahead and say The Rock wins this weekend. I'm going to say that Baywatch beats Pirates, Dead Men Tell No Tales. Of course, there's a lot to wait and see on that, but I think that of the better films, in terms of like Rotten Tomatoes scores, I think Baywatch will smoke Pirates of the Caribbean.
Well, I think they're both going to be rotten. Personally, I don't think either one of them is going to be very well reviewed.
I'm guessing Baywatch will be just this side of fresh. It'll be like 58.
We'll see. But if it was just a regular weekend, I might be able to be swayed with you. But this is the Memorial Day weekend. This is when families, when you have the mom and the dad and the kids go together, which is what for me gives Pirates the edge, because they're not all going to go see Baywatch. I certainly don't think I would watch Baywatch with my mother or anyone in my family who is over 25. So that's why I'm going with Pirates. But I can see where you're coming from.
All right, we've got the week of June 2nd. Captain Underpants, the first epic movie going up against Lady Underpants, Wonder Woman. Now, this was shocking. When we did Dan's Labyrinth last week, there were so many people who were excited for Captain Underpants, a movie that I had barely heard about until your show.
This is a movie that I'd barely heard about until I started doing research. Yeah, we do a summer box office competition every year. We ask people to put what's in the top 10, and about 10% of the people that replied, and we had over 1,500 replies, put Captain Underpants in their top 10. Now, for me, that says not necessarily this is going to be a top 10 summer movie, but that says that there is awareness for this movie out there that even I wasn't aware of, that there is, I think, a kids audience that is far below us as far as age goes, that this has some credibility with. So I don't think it's going to beat Wonder Woman.
No.
I think Wonder Woman's going to open #1. But I think Captain Underpants may be one of those movies, strangely, that is a surprise, because I think that there's more... attention. I think that there's more notoriety to this brand than a lot of the people our age realize.
Absolutely. And since we have fur babies and not real babies, we're not aware of these sorts of things. But I mean, without question, Wonder Woman, everybody who I'm talking to, the more buzz I hear, people keep saying, this is the movie we needed. This is the movie that we deserve right now.
This is, and I hope this holds up for Warner Brothers and DC's sake, because I mean, obviously I am a fan.
Yes.
This is the first movie so far that has good buzz. Now, it's early. We still have a couple weeks left till release. But so far, the buzz on this movie has been good. I hope the buzz on this movie turns great. I hope this movie's great. I hope it's a big hit, because it's time to turn the DCEU around critically.
Yes.
It's doing fine box office-wise. It's maybe not as big as Warner Brothers wanted, but it's doing fine box office-wise. Critically, it's time for the DCEU to turn around, and I would love it if Wonder Woman was the movie that did that.
The thing that I think is surprising is that they're not letting people talk about it yet. It's still sort of embargoed. I think the buzz will go from good to great as soon as people are allowed to discuss it.
I hope so.
And I really hope that it's a huge hit, too. I hope Patty Jenkins blows it out. I want this to be #1 big time. I think without question it's going to be Captain Underpants. The question is with Pirates, Baywatch, Captain Underpants, and Wonder Woman, how do you see the first 2 weeks stacking up? Like, where do you see Wonder Woman is coming out the gate strong?
Yeah, they know how to open a movie. DC and Warner Brothers know how to open a movie. They've had trouble with the legs. The second week drop has always been a story, but they know how to open a movie, and I think Wonder Woman is going to open. Is it going to open as big as Batman v Superman? I don't think it is going. I don't think it's going to open as big as Suicide Squad, just because Joker and Batman and Superman cinematically are much more established properties. But I think that Wonder Woman's going to open well. That's where the real fight begins, because it can open well, and if it's great, that means it's going to have the legs to stay, and I hope that it does.
I think it's going to be a Wonder Woman Baywatch kind of weekend. I think Pirates will maybe drop down to #3, and Captain Underpants will open somewhere around #4. But then we go into the week of June 9th. It Comes at Night, which is a genre picture. It's about sort of a young family who have to find their way out of this desolate house, and there's a supernatural force. It's being marketed in a really oblique way because they're trying to keep the thriller aspects of it. And then The Mummy opens. Tom Cruise's The Mummy. I want to know what you think is going to win this weekend, and I'm going to go ahead on the record right now and say I don't think either will win. I think Wonder Woman will hold over.
Yeah, I didn't. I picked The Mummy, but I didn't really even think about the holdover. I think if I had to choose, I would probably say that Wonder Woman holds over. I think The Mummy will probably open a strong #2. Again, if it's a great movie and Wonder Woman maybe doesn't have very good critical response, I could see that flip-flopping. It Comes at Night, though, circle that, because that is the movie that I think could really surprise people this summer.
It's
a genre movie. We saw with Get Out that a horror movie particularly, that there is some thirst in the marketplace for that genre.
And The Conjuring 2 did very well last year.
The Conjuring 2 did very well last year. Don't Breathe did very well last year, and the Lights Out did very well last year, all during the summer. So I think that It Comes at Night could be a surprise, maybe not a top 10 movie, but this could be a movie that surprises people like, oh, I didn't hear that. It could be a legitimate, it's A24, which if you don't know who A24 is, look up a good movie that's nominated for an Oscar in the past couple years, and A24 is
It's either going to be Annapurna or A24.
Exactly.
Yeah, and they do really interesting stuff. Like they did Spring Breakers. Like they make bold choices. So It Comes at Night, I think, is one of those movies that I think we're going to see have legs, but I think The Mummy is not going to do very well. I look at the previews, I look at the billboards, and I'm just like, this is not being marketed well, and it looks in all the wrong ways like X-Men Apocalypse.
Maybe, but Tom Cruise is running. People love that in the summer. They love Tom Cruise running, and there is some affection. There is still a lot of affection for that 1999 Brendan Fraser movie. Amongst people of our ilk and our we talk about Captain Underpants was a younger generation. The Mummy is a movie that for a generation like ours, it's 18 years old now. Can you believe that?
Whoa.
The Mummy, that's depressing. But people have nostalgia for that movie, and so I think that those people might go see it because they like the Brendan Fraser version.
I think it's possible.
And you have the Russell Crowe and the fact that it's setting up perhaps a universal cinematic monster universe. I'm a little up on The Mummy. I'm kind of regretting not putting it on my top 10 because I think that it could hit. I really do. It could flop, but I think it could hit.
I think that Wonder Woman wins the weekend of June 9th. I think that Mummy sort of goes off into the darkness not that long after it, and I think It Comes at Night will continue to sort of live on, but you know, listen, The Mummy, The Scorpion King, there are many good things that we can watch. I don't know that this movie will live in that same pantheon, but only time will tell. Then we go to the week of June 16th, Cars 3. Behemoth. Take all the money. Just all of it. I mean, big time. Oh, what? What's the face?
No, it's going to win the weekend, and it's going to make a lot of money. But if you look traditionally at the Pixar box office, Cars is not one of their landmark franchises. It's always had kind of like good but not great box office numbers. I don't know if it's going to do Finding Dory numbers. I really don't know if it is.
I don't know that it will either, but I think it's going to be giant. And you're talking about, it's Memorial Day. We want to take the kids. This is June 16th. This is basically when schools start closing. So it's first weekend out of school. You got to get rid of your child because you're already like, it's a lot. And they go off to Cars 3. I think it's going to be gigantic. And then, bizarrely, Rough Night. Rough Night, which is basically, do you remember that movie that Peter Berg did way back in the day called Bad Things? Very Bad Things.
Yes.
Yeah. This is basically the female version. This is like the Bridesmaids version of Very Bad Things. So you've got this group of friends who accidentally murder a stripper when they are hanging out for a bachelorette party. It's got Scarlett Johansson. It's got
Kate McKinnon, right?
Thank you, Kate McKinnon, the girl who I love so much from Broad City, like Alana Glazer. This movie, embarrassingly, is the thing my father is most hyped for this summer. He's like, Rough Night, it's gonna be the best. My dad, who loves movies like Blue Streak and White Chicks. So he's really excited for this one.
This is a sleeper pick for a lot of people in their top 10s because, again, if you look at tradition, The Heat was a top 10 summer movie. Ghostbusters was a top 10, believe it or not. Last summer was a top 10 summer movie. There is a female-driven comedy that often finds a place on the top 10 list. So I think Rough Night is a movie that's going to open pretty well. It's counter-programming. It's definitely the opposite of the audience for Cars 3.
Oh, yeah.
Again, I think, though, that it's got to be from week 2 and beyond, it's got to be a really strong comedy. It's got to have a lot of great word of mouth to get past that opening weekend surge. Because comedy, particularly with people, if they hear that a comedy isn't very good, they will stay home.
Well, that same weekend, we also have All Eyes on Me, which is the Tupac biopic that we've been talking about, waiting for forever. There's been a million different iterations of this movie. This one is finally coming to theaters. And people, this was something else we learned on Dan's Labyrinth. People put this on their top 10 lists.
Not as many. It was much more of a sleeper even than Captain Underpants. But there were a lot of people that did put this as a sleeper on their top 10 list. I think because they saw from 2 years ago the success that Straight Outta Compton had late in the summer, and I think that's the distinction, was Straight Outta Compton did have a great box office result for 2 reasons. Number 1, it was a great movie.
Yes.
Number 2, it was very late in the summer. I think it came out in August. It really didn't have major competition going forward, and so it was able to rack up a lot of money at the end of the summer. That's how the first Guardians movie helped it to become the #1 movie of the summer that it came out. And the reason I'm comparing these two is just because it's the most comparable recent release. You know, All Eyes on Me, Tupac Shakur biopic, kind of relevant to the same era, Straight Outta Compton. So you're going to think that they're going to be aiming for the people that enjoyed that movie. I don't know if as many people are going to see it because, again, it's right in the middle of this summer crush. Like June is, in this month is every week is packed, and I don't know if it's going to have those legs to expand like that.
Well, and the other thing about All Eyes on Me is when you look at the story of NWA, there were 5 members. There's a lot of backstory. We also know that there's a very, very happy ending for 2 of the members, Ice Cube and Dr. Dre. And Eazy-E, I mean, I remember Eazy-E and I remember what happened with him, and that's sad. But with Tupac, like, that's the Titanic. You know how the story ends. And do you want to go see a movie where you fall in love with the character, you see their rise, you see their potential, and then you see it wiped out? This is not a spoiler. We all know what happened to Tupac Shakur.
Right.
So I wonder, but I mean, in the era where like The People versus O.J. Simpson is so well done and so fascinating and inspires this new sort of fanaticism and interest in something like a historical event we all knew about, maybe it can play into that. But I wonder, I think that this has the potential, like you've been saying, to be a sleeper, but does it get buried when you've got The Mummy, Wonder Woman and Cars 3.
I think it might. And you know, we had Notorious, which came out a few years ago,
Oh,
which
yeah.
was Notorious B.I.G. Biopic, which again, I think was very well regarded by a lot of people critically. It just didn't have, I think, the space to spread out its wings commercially. So this could be a case of a critical hit that maybe does well, but doesn't blow the doors off the box office, which is fine. Not every movie has to make $100 million.
No, but by this point, Wonder Woman will have. Will Cars 3? Cars 3 will win the weekend, right? Can we say?
Cars 3, it's not going to be a photo finish. Cars 3 is going to end the weekend.
It's going to smoke the competition.
It's going to smoke the competition, but it runs into a buzzsaw the next week.
The week of June 23rd. Transformers: The Last Night. I mean, come on. Nothing else is even opening that weekend. They're just like, well, it's Transformers.
Yeah.
We're just going to let you go ahead and have that. This is for you, Paramount. I mean, Michael Bay.
Yeah.
Come on. I can admit, The Rock is an amazing film. It was on television the other day.
The Rock is one of the best action movies ever made, and one of the best movies made in the 90s.
Armageddon. I will enjoy it till my dying breath.
It's a cheesy, fun action movie.
Super fun. The Transformers movies started out really
The first one actually wasn't bad.
No.
The second one was atrocious.
Yep.
The third one was not very good at all. The fourth one is legitimately one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my life.
Is it a movie? Is that what
I don't know what you... The commercial. The fourth commercial was one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my life. This one, I just don't...
Why do they? I mean, you know what I think is interesting is
Age of Extinction made $1 billion. Age of Extinction made $1 billion. It was the lowest grossing Transformers movie in the U.S., but it made $1 billion worldwide. That's exactly why they're doing a fifth one, because these movies are only getting bigger as they shrink here in the U.S.
But here's what I think is so interesting. So the breakdown is humans and Transformers are at war. Optimus Prime is gone. The key to saving our future lies buried in the secrets of the past, in the hidden history of Transformers on Earth. But if you've watched any of the trailers, it looks like a weird Ren Fair Transformers because they are using the King Arthur thing as part of this movie, and we saw King Arthur does not drive the box office.
Well, but they've shown 80 different things. Like the first trailer was the King Arthur thing, and then it's like World War II, but then they had like the kind of documentary style with the little girl talking to the camera, and that's kind of set in a future.
That's
set in the future with Mark Wahlberg. I don't know what know what this movie is, but it's going to win that weekend. I think it's going to win that weekend.
Yes. If there's anything that could beat it, maybe Cars can beat it, but both you and I picked it as Transformers Last Night winning the week of June 21st. So, I mean, we know it's going to happen. There's no way around it. But luckily, there is salvation.
There is.
It's called the week of June 30th. All right, the week of June 30th, we have a movie that I am stupidly excited for, and that is Baby Driver.
Yes.
Now, here is the only thing I am worried about. Baby Driver, Edgar Wright's new film, it looks so good. It was supposed to come out in the fall, and they bumped it into the summer. And I think the reason they did that is because after it premiered at South by, they got like this huge buzz.
Huge,
and
great
they
word of
knew
mouth.
like this is going to be gigantic.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Edgar Wright
I
movies
think
get buried.
That's
I'm sorry.
my fear.
In the U.S., Edgar Wright movies get buried, and one of the movies with the biggest buzz coming out of any event was Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
Yeah.
They showed that at Comic-Con, and it came out of that convention with like white hot buzz in its target audience, and its absolute target audience. People talking about how it was amazing, incredible, one of the best films that came out in the fall without much competition, and completely tanked. Edgar Wright for me is my favorite director working right now. I will go watch anything that he does.
I love him as a producer too. Attack the Block is one of my favorite movies of like the last 15 years.
It's incredible, but I get that you want to capitalize on this buzz, and it did come out with a lot of buzz, but it's not just in the summer. I mean, it is in the murderer's row of every single big movie. 3 weeks before it and 3 weeks after it. And I really worry that it's going to get absolutely buried because it's niche. It's
not counter-programming. It is niche, but it is still an action movie. It's still a heist movie. It's very specific. It's got a great soundtrack. It's got all these things going for it. It'll get the kids coming because you've got Ansel Elgort or whatever.
Elgort, yeah.
So that's sort of one of those things that like gets people going. But it's going up against Despicable Me 3.
Yeah.
And Despicable Me 3, I think, is going to win the weekend. Dan?
I think it's going to win the summer. That was Despicable Me 3 is my pick to win the summer. I think I picked it as the #1 movie. of this entire season. I think right now you can't beat the Minions.
Yeah.
And I picked this as the #1 movie of the summer. I think it is going to open huge, and we'll see how it holds. But you know, I could be wrong. Maybe kids are more in love with Minions than they are Gru and Steve Carell and all this. And the marketing's just starting for this movie. But I think Despicable Me 3 is going to suck up every dollar of the kids' box office that weekend.
It's a big weekend. Then you also have, talking about counter programming, Amityville: The Awakening, which is about a single mother moving her 3 children into a haunted house. And then you have The House, which is the Amy Poehler, Will Ferrell comedy coming out from Warner Brothers. So you've got a comedy that weekend, you've got a horror that weekend, you've got animation that weekend, you've got Transformers still doing all kinds of stuff. You also have Pixar still doing all kinds of stuff. Wonder Woman will still be in theaters, and here comes Baby Driver, which I think will probably be one of my favorite movies of the summer. I just hope I'm not seeing it in an empty theater.
Nothing would make me happier than for this movie to be a big hit. If it's good. If it's good, which I haven't seen it, first of all, nothing would make me happier than it being a great movie. And if it is great, I hope it's a hit. But it's an uphill climb.
It is. Well, you know, it doesn't have
maybe even more uphill by the next week.
The next week, but it's not an uphill climb for knowing what we're going to go see that weekend. The week of July 7th, Spider-Man: Homecoming opens. I can't wait. It looks so good. And I didn't think I needed another one. I'm like, I've done it. We've been here. We've got the Garfield. We've got the Maguire. I get it. But then they started showing me all these trailers. You throw Spider-Man into Civil War, and I'm just like, this is rad. This is going to be great. I think this is going to be the best Peter Parker we've seen possibly ever. I can't wait. I think Tom Holland's going to crush it.
That depends on, is Marvel Spider-Man showing up or is Sony Spider-Man showing up?
I think it's Marvel Spider-Man.
Sony ran Spider-Man with Amazing Spider-Man 2 into the ground.
Right.
And we're still only, I think, 3 years removed from that. However, Spider-Man was the buzziest part of Civil War. So I think this movie's going to make a lot of money. It's, even though it is Marvel and Sony, I think the word is out that Marvel has a lot of creative control. So I think that a lot of the tarnishing of Spider-Man's image that was done with the last movie is, a lot of people are brushing that away. People love Spider-Man. They really do. Like, for a while, Spider-Man was 2002, that was the biggest opening weekend of all time. That legitimized in a lot of ways the first Spider-Man movie. That was kind of the beginning in a lot of ways of this current superhero trend. X-Men was good in the year 2000 when it came out, but Spider-Man was the first like massive $100 million. Oh my God, a comic book movie can be a massive $400 million hit. We need to make more of these.
Well, and the other thing with this is we haven't had a Spider-Man who was actually a teenager.
Yeah.
And now we're really getting that. And I think this is going to be the connective tissue that holds so many Marvel movies moving forward together. I think this is going to be gigantic. It's definitely winning this weekend. And I'm afraid it's going to create a ruckus for the following week, the week of July 14th.
Yeah.
We are going to see the opening of War for the Planet of the Apes. This is a great franchise.
It is.
This is an absolutely fantastic franchise. Every single one of these movies, it's the rare franchise where the second film was better than the first. The third has the potential to follow that same trend. Maybe it won't be as good as the second, but it certainly looks as good as the first. And there's also a movie called Wish Upon, which is about a teenage girl discovering a box that carries magical powers at a deadly price. That's not going to be, nobody's going to talk about that.
Unless this is like one of the best movie ever made that nobody knows about.
Nobody's going to think about Wish Upon. But
yeah.
War for the Planet of the Apes, I think, is going to get swallowed up by Spider-Man. I think Spider-Man is going to hold over, stay in the #1 spot. I think War is being under-promoted at this point. And again, this doesn't come out until July 14th, so there's still 2 months. I have not heard any talk. I haven't heard about any screenings. I don't know what, I feel like they're just sort of like, oh, we'll ride the good faith of the other films.
I think this is going to be one of those weekends where there's no downside to either one or two. I think that Planet of the Apes is going to open strong. I've got it edging out Spider-Man. I think it's going to be close. I think if Spider-Man opens to 140 and holds on to 60, then it becomes what does Planet of the Apes do? So I've got it neck and neck at 1 and 2. I picked Planet of the Apes. I could see Spider-Man holding over, but these are such good movies. I really love this franchise. The second one was so much better than the first one. The first one wasn't bad. The second one was great.
Yeah.
And I hope that they continue this with the third one. I know that Andy Serkis today was kind of giving an interview suggesting like maybe this is close to the end. This could be the end. We don't know. They're certainly not marketing it that way. But I just really hope that this keeps up the tradition of the franchise. And if it's good, I hope people go see it.
Me too. I plan on seeing it. That takes us to the week of July 21st, where we have Dunkirk, which is, of course, getting already a ton of buzz, a lot of interest. People are already talking Oscar, and that's definitely a possibility. Is that a possibility for Valerian in the City of a Thousand Planets? Probably not. But I think that's gonna be fun.
Yeah.
That's your option that weekend is, do you want to go watch a war movie or do you want to go see a super fun Luc Besson movie starring a supermodel?
Yeah. And
Rihanna.
I somewhat recklessly put Valerian in the City of a Thousand Planets on my top 10 summer list for this year. It was really more of a protest vote because every other movie that I put on was a sequel or part of a franchise. And I just was like, I need to put something original on there. I went with Valerian in the City of a Thousand Planets because it has the wow factor.
Oh,
Visually, it has the appeal of just like, wow, this looks great. So did Jupiter Ascending. So this movie has to be great to make that much money.
But also, Jupiter Ascending came out much earlier in the year.
It did.
Oh man, that movie stunk up.
And it didn't make any money, even with no competition. I think if Valerian in the City of a Thousand Planets is great, it could get that Mad Max buzz and get just enough money to chug in there. But Dunkirk, Christopher Nolan, there's a certain subset, particularly a lot of our viewers, I think, but particularly also on the internet, that love Christopher Nolan, and that's all they need to know. But there's also that I think a group of particularly older Americans that are drawn to the World War II angle.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Dan Merle.
Yeah.
It's the week of July 21st. You can only buy a ticket to one film, Dunkirk or Valerian, the City of a Thousand Planets. I'll also throw in Girls Trip, which opens up that week, which is about 4 lifelong girlfriends traveling to New Orleans for the annual Essence Festival.
I was watching that. It has a scene where Jada Pinkett Smith pees on a crowd in New Orleans. So you've got that.
Didn't need that.
From Zipline.
I loved her until that moment. That's okay. Jada, you're still my girl. I loved you in Magic Mike XXL.
Yeah.
So you've got Girls Trip, Valerian, the City of a Thousand Planets, in Dunkirk. You only have $14, so you can only see one. There are no matinees.
If it's me, if it's my choice,
it's your
to
choice.
See on the big screen.
It's yours. What are you seeing, Dan Merle?
Oh man,
you can only see
Dunkirk's
one.
an IMAX, so that's
okay. You have $17.
Okay, I have $17. I want to see both of them. I'm going to see both of them.
No, you can only see one.
I would pick Valerian just because it looks too interesting. However, if the reviews came out and it was horrible, I reserve the right to change my mind.
All right, but what do you think is going to win the weekend?
I've said Dunkirk, and yeah, I'll stick with Dunkirk.
I think Dunkirk's going to win the weekend too, but if I only had $14, I would totally go see Valerian in the City of a Thousand Planets. Yeah. I think it looks so good. It's giving me all that Fifth Element that I just want so badly. I hope Valerian is awesome. If it does end up in the top 10, I will be thrilled.
No offense to Dunkirk. I mean, but I've seen World War II epic before, and Valerian looks like something completely bonkers, and maybe in a bad way, maybe in a good way. Who knows? So,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and also at that point, what's great about Dunkirk is we don't have anything before that really like sits in that place of true historical gravitas, Oscar bait. It's very grown up outside of like independent films. Yeah. So for a big tent pole, I think it's Valerian, but I think Dunkirk will win the weekend money-wise. The week of July 28th, we have some interesting movies here. Interesting movie number 1, The Emoji Movie. If you haven't seen, we did a trailer breakdown for the first trailer on ScreenJunkies News. We have an Inconvenient sequel, which is the follow-up to An Inconvenient Truth.
Yep.
And we have Atomic Blonde. Atomic Blonde, which is the Charlize Theron film about an undercover MI6 agent who is sent to Berlin during the Cold War. Yeah. I have one film here that I really want to see. I have one film here that I really don't want to see.
Yeah.
Let's say first what we want to see and what we think. What do you think is going to win the money? What's going to take the money this weekend?
Oh, The Emoji Movie, no, hands down, I think.
I think the Atomic Blonde is going to get the money that weekend.
That's where my money is going to go that weekend.
What do you think is going to be good? Between these movies, Atomic Blonde, Emoji Movie, and An Inconvenient Sequel.
Well, I think Inconvenient Sequel is probably going to be the better movie. I mean,
give me a Rotten Tomatoes score.
Inconvenient sequel?
Yeah.
Oh, I think it's in the tank. I mean, we're talking 90% plus.
All right, I'm going to give it a 92%.
Just because the first one is an Oscar-winning documentary, and unless they totally tank it, it's going to be well received
And I heard it was actually better than the first one.
Well, there you go.
My parents went to a screening that Al Gore spoke at, that Joseph Gordon-Levitt moderated, that no one knew about. They said it was only a third of the way full, the screening.
Wow.
So I wonder, is that a marketing issue?
Probably, or just it's not for everybody. Not everybody is going to get up off of the couch or stand in front of the marquee and say, "Oh, I have Spider-Man and Planet of the Apes and emojis and Atomic Blonde and Charlize Theron kicking." I'm going to go see the sobering documentary about how we're all going to die soon.
But that might happen with Dunkirk too.
It could, but I think it could be a sequel. It's just like that's not a documentary like that in the middle of the summer season is not going to be for everyone.
Sure.
Even me, I'm not going to be in the mood to go see that necessarily over whatever else is playing.
But that's got like a 92% on Rotten Tomatoes. What does the Emoji Movie have on Rotten Tomatoes?
I don't know. I'm weird with Rotten Tomatoes because if a movie's in the middle, like it could go 70 and 40 and it's the same score, it's the same quality of film. So I guess it's probably, slightly rotten.
Do you think that this is the Angry Birds of the summer?
Yeah.
So it will do somewhat well, good enough, do well overseas. Will there be a sequel?
Probably. Everyone has cell phones. Everyone has cell phones and everyone has emojis. So it's one of those universal things. Yeah, I think it'll be the Angry Birds. I think it'll be a success. I think it'll do well, do good global numbers. We'll probably see Emoji 2 in 2 years.
Here's the thing. Why did Patrick Stewart make this movie?
I don't know. But listen, I was skeptical about the Lego movie too. And that turned out great.
Yeah, and the Emoji Movie looks like a ripoff of the Lego Movie, Inside Out, and Wreck-It Ralph.
Those are all three good movies.
Those are all good movies.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Look, maybe it'll be great. I cannot wait for Atomic Blonde. I want Atomic Blonde to be beyond epic.
Yeah.
I hope that it is super kick-ass. I love Charlize Theron. What I have heard is this is a female John Wick. Give me that movie. I want that. I want that to win.
I hope it's a female John Wick in an interesting way and not just John Wick with Charlize Theron in it. Like I like the fact that it's in the 80s. I think you have a lot of chance to do something a little different thematically. It's the same director as the John Wick's movies. It looks really cool. The trailers for this look cool. Charlize Theron is a badass. We saw that in Fury Road. She was a badass.
Yes.
Like I like that she's kind of taken this turn in her career where it's not just the serious parts. Like she's starting to get into the action roles because she can bring that kind of intensity that she has dramatically to these action roles, and it works really well for her.
And she was a dancer, so she can do all of the choreography. Her fight choreography is incredible. And yeah, she was monster. She can act her way anywhere she wants to go in any direction. I adore her. I really hope Atomic Blonde is actually the start of like a really strong female action franchise. Like of all the films that we're seeing come out, there's some that are just foregone conclusions in terms of franchise. I hope that is one of them.
We'll see. I mean, nobody gave the John Wick no one ever thought there'd be a John Wick 2 when that was coming out, and that really connected with a lot of people. So
yep. Then the week of August 4th.
Winding it down.
You want to talk about something that people planned on connecting with that may or may not actually make their way to people's hearts?
Yeah.
The Dark Tower. The Dark Tower opens this weekend, and this was something that was sort of a foregone conclusion. This was going to be a huge box office success. This was going to be a fan favorite. And then they gave us the first trailer, and the reaction was not enthusiastic.
Well, I mean, I think that this was a foregone conclusion that this movie was going to be a big hit if it had come out in 2002. And I'm not. It's not to make a joke about the Dark Tower. It's just that this thing has been in development for so long, and I think that there was a lot of demand for this maybe 10 years ago, more so than there is now. Dark Tower is a series that the fans who read The Dark Tower are very passionate about, but I don't hear a lot about it now. Like it's not one of those series that you continue to hear about. And even for people that do like the books, a lot of the reaction that I read to the first trailer was, this isn't like what I read. This is different. You change this, you change that. So it looks like it's going to be different enough from the books that maybe fans of the books aren't going to like it. And then I think they might have a hard time bringing in people that don't know the books because it looks kind of generic. If you don't know that it's based on a book series, it looks like another sky beam tower falling thing. And,
with a little Westworld
yeah,
thrown
with a
in
little
there.
Westworld. There was some cool stuff with the gun, loading the gun, and Idris Elba, and
Matthew McConaughey.
That part looked cool, but I think it's going to be hard to bring over droves of people that don't know what the source material is.
And then Hulu has Castle Rock right now, which they're in the middle of like writing and about to start producing, and there's been some talk that maybe those two would be connected. So I don't know about that. But then there is also Detroit opening on August 4th. And this is a true story of the police raid in Detroit and the riots that ensued in Detroit in 1967. It's a Catherine Bigelow film. It's got John Boyega.
Yeah.
I think this movie is going to be, this has the most potential to be the big Oscar contender outside of Dunkirk. This really could be a huge film in terms of critical acclaim. Whether or not it will be a big box office, well, that is up for debate. There's also Midnight Sun, which is a smaller release based on a Japanese film about a 17-year-old girl who's been sheltered ever since her childhood, confined in her house during the day because of a rare disease where she can't go out into sunlight because it's deadly. And then fate intervenes. So Midnight Sun, Detroit, and The Dark Tower. What do you think will win the weekend, Dan Merle?
I've got The Dark Tower winning. I mean, like I said, this is kind of the wind down to the summer. Dark Tower's kind of the last big blockbuster-ish type movie, even though it's not quite as big as the other ones. I think it's going to attract enough curiosity to bring people in. I just don't know how much it's ultimately going to be able to bank.
I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to say that Detroit wins the weekend of August 4th, because I think we're going to have, at this point, a lot of superhero fatigue. I think there's going to be people who are like, I'm done with the genre stuff. I want to see a great movie. And in this political climate and in the world we're living in today, I think that this will really connect with audiences. And I think Detroit could end up being one of those surprise hits toward the end of the summer where people expected it to open maybe at like 8 million and it opens at like 15, which still is not, those aren't Wonder Woman numbers. But for a movie like this, I think that it could still be something that we're talking about a long way past August 4th. And a lot of these other films are sort of movies that we will see, enjoy, but like the popcorn we eat while we watch them, they will be forgotten not long after.
Gone.
The Emoji Movie.
Yeah.
Others, I think, will linger with us. So a couple questions for you, Dan.
Sure.
What movie do you think is going to be the highest grosser of the year, internationally or domestic? You make the choice.
Well, domestically, I stand by it. I think it's going to be Despicable Me 3. Internationally, even though I don't think it's going to make as much money here, I think it's going to be Transformers: The Last Night. I just think that it's going to do. To me, right now, it's the closest thing I can make an analogy to is the Fast and the Furious franchise, which Fate of the Furious right now is tracking below the 6th movie. Meaning it's not even close to how much Furious 7 made. It's making even less than the 6th movie made here in the United States. It is almost, it's coming up behind Beauty and the Beast right now. In a couple weeks, this could be the #1 movie with $1.2 billion worldwide. By far the biggest success internationally of the year. So I think you're going to see that with Transformers. I think you're going to see a lot of decreased interest in that movie here in the US, and I think you're going to see a lot more interest in it internationally. And I think the studios smartly are realizing that that's the play for these big movies. International is the play, not necessarily the US. So I think that that's going to be the #1 movie internationally.
Going off of Fast and the Furious, I'm going to say that Cars 3 will be the biggest international film because it's got the Disney thing, it's got the car thing, which is like the Fast and the Furious thing. And then we didn't talk about it today, but we talked about it on Dan's Labyrinth. I'm really hoping the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 maintains its position as the top grosser of the year, of the summer. And if that doesn't win, just like heart of hearts, my biggest wish, I would love to see Wonder Woman be the top grosser. I would love that more than anything. Well,
Guardians is at 250 already. I mean, if I was going to make a guess, I'd say it legs out to 325, 350-ish. It's holding pretty well so far. But it's also just, the competition is just beginning, starting this weekend with Alien Covenant, which is not on either one of our lists either, but it is competition. Yeah, I think that that's a good number to beat. The question is, are any of these movies going to be breakout hits and jump over that and surpass it? Who knows?
What movie do you think is going to really get people talking? What do you think is going to be the one that we're buzzing about the most?
Well, like I said, I think It Comes at Night is one that has the potential to really be a genre surprise for a lot of people to say, like, I've never even heard of that movie. Kind of like The Sixth Sense was. I've never even heard of that movie, and wow, this is really good. I mean, if you're just going by the buzz, if you're going by what people are saying about it, which is that it is very visceral and it is a very terrifying movie, that could leg out a lot more money and just be kind of a surprise audience hit. Wonder Woman, I think, is the one that has a lot. I don't know if it has a lot to lose, if I'm being honest, just because I think for a lot of people, the expectations are low. I think people got their expectations very high for Batman v Superman and Suicide Squad. And for a lot of people, those expectations weren't met. So I think there's a lot less of a sky high expectation for Wonder Woman. So in a weird way, even though it is so anticipated, I think that's the movie that has the potential of all the big blockbusters to surprise the most people. Because if it is great, I think people are generally going to be surprised that, like, oh, wow, this is the one that finally seemed to click for everybody. There's a subset of fans, and not to say that they're wrong, there's a subset of fans that already love the DCEU. Which is great. That's not the majority, I don't think. So if Wonder Woman is really great and is like a 4-quadrant hit, I think people might actually be the most surprised because they maybe were expecting something that was a little more niche, that tonally was a little more, it was a little different than what they're getting. Yeah. So I think that Wonder Woman could really surprise some people.
What do you think is the movie that we are still going to be talking about next year, the year after, because we enjoyed it so much? Not because of what it did box office wise, but like the one that we remember. Like, what's the one that you're going through your DVDs and you're like, I'm watching this tonight?
Baby Driver. I mean, Scott Pilgrim was not a box office hit. That is still a movie that its fans talk about almost incessantly, and it found its audience a lot on video. So that I think has the potential to be something that people remember past this summer. The superhero ones, I think, all kind of tend to run together. I mean, how many people still talk that much about Iron Man 3 or Thor: The Dark World? Sure. Like, those are not movies that left a huge footprint. So I think the distinctive ones, in a weird way, the ones that are almost too niche to find a huge audience are the ones that live the longest. Dan, thank you so much for being here with me to discuss this. Yes. And thank you guys for being here with us to talk about this. Make sure you check in on Screen Junkies News every Monday, because we're going to be talking about how all of these films perform. And Dan, you do this all the time. I do, yes. Where can the people find it? Over on Screen Junkies Plus, I have a show called Dan's Labyrinth, where we cover all the movies that come out the weekend that they come out, and also we talk about all of this stuff. We do a summer movie report. If you watched Sasha and I's show last year, we do one every week where we break down the numbers, see how everyone's brackets are doing. It's fantasy football for nerds, as somebody said. Bigger nerds. I love it so much. Sasha is going to drop in from time to time, and we have a lot of fun. So if you want to know more, check in. And you know what my favorite thing was with Summer Movie Report was finding out which made the most per theater. Yeah. Because that's where you find little gems. Like, that's where we would get, like, The Lobster, which I just rewatched. Hell or High Water. Hell or High Water. Don't Think Twice. These were all movies that were on people's top 10 lists at the end of the year that opened in the summer. Didn't make a lot of money, but the weekends that they opened were the per theater winners. Absolutely. So. South Side with You. Like, I'm getting the chills thinking about some of these movies. So we talked about some huge, huge films today, and there are going to be some awesome ones. But don't forget, there's also some really great independent films that you should definitely check out. Yeah. And let us know whether it's one of these huge movies, something smaller. What are you most excited for this summer? Let us know in the comments below. You can tweet us at SJ News. Make sure to like and subscribe, and we will see you all summer long with box office reports and more Dan Murrell. Yay! See you soon.